Hey, good evening, guys. Dr. Nathan Thompson here with Exemplify Health Center, a Wellness Way affiliate right here in Yorkville, Illinois. Happy Monday evening, guys. Thank you, as always, for joining us. I hope you had a great day. I hope you had also a great weekend. And if you are watching right now, make sure you say hello. Also, let me know where you are watching from. I always appreciate people watching from all across the United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines. We have people from all over. I also get a kick out of watching where people are watching from or being able to see it. So I always appreciate you guys. Let me know where you watch from. So guys, tonight I'm going to go over with you a couple of different things, monkeypox and your immune system. I'm actually going to break down for you guys, really help you to understand the immune system with a pretty easy example. And because there's just this panic, about a new pandemic, whether it is COVID-19, whether it's Marburg virus, whether it is monkeypox, whether it's the next virus, and you just have to understand how the body works in identifying a foreign protein. And I'm also going to show you why we do immunity completely backwards, and also why so many people, they tend to freak out on normal symptoms that the immune system is actually working. So I'm going to talk about tonight monkeypox, your immune system. I'm also going to go over the new CDC guidelines and why they are relaxed, and also ask the CDC some questions as well. Maybe these are some of the questions that you can present to people who maybe gave you a hard time for standing up for your rights, for asking questions that are based on guidelines that are not backed on research or in any kind of scientific study, not based on physiology whatsoever. I always say if you want to change a person's mind, just start asking them questions, and it'll help them to understand maybe the error of their ability to be able to reason and to use logic. So let's get into it, guys. And again, if you are joining us, make sure you say hello. Make sure you let me know where you are watching from. And also, guys, make sure that you please share this video if you find what I'm going to be going over tonight actually beneficial to you and hopefully beneficial to a lot of other people. So let's talk about this. So last week I talked about monkeypox initially, and so if you didn't have a chance to watch that, please make sure you go back and you can watch that video. But I talked about some takeaways on monkeypox, and quite honestly, I think that this video we probably should have done it last week, because you're actually seeing that they have tried to ramp up some of these things by declaring monkeypox a national emergency or an emergency in certain states like California, New York, where I'm at in Illinois. And you can see that people aren't really buying it. They're not falling for it like they did with previous other quote-unquote pandemics. But I went over monkeypox and why you shouldn't be concerned about it. And the biggest takeaways that I went over last week is that, number one, monkeypox is not fatal, okay? It's not fatal. And in fact, there's been 5 fatalities, but the people that have had anything, had been hurt by it, fatal, is because of being immunocompromised, whether that's because of medically induced, whether that's been some kind of treatment, whether that's drug induced, or whether that is actually HIV induced, as well. Number 2, the inflammatory response is like all other infections. Guys, I will tell you it's the same thing when it comes to any infection, is that the inflammatory response is the same, because the inflammatory response is supposed to happen at the level of the barriers, which is why you see congestion, why you're going to see fatigue, why you're going to see coughing, why you're going to see body pains, joint pains, things like that. Those signs are actually means that the immune system is actually working, that the symptoms are actually part of the cure. And we also talked about the need for proper and basic hygiene and sanitation, like washing your hands and clothes, and avoid prolonged, intimate contact on exposed sores. I won't get into any more detail. I'm sure that you can put, guys, 2 and 2 together. Unless you are doing Common Core math, then that might be a little bit harder. The vaccine was actually approved for monkeypox long before any kind of outbreak currently, in which the vaccine was actually approved. It was submitted for approval approximately 3 years ago, and it was approved 2 years ago by the FDA. And then the last one is no, you do not have to wear a mask when it comes to monkeypox, okay? That's what we went over last week. Guys, I want to make sure that you do know this slide right here, because this comes from the CDC. So anytime that they decide they want to push the narrative further, understand you should go to the CDC, you should actually screenshot what the CDC says about monkeypox and how it spreads, because guys, they may go back and they may change this because people aren't screenshotting actual things that they say. You actually will see that they go back and they change definitions of things all the time in order to be able to fit the narrative. They actually changed the definition of what a vaccine was, actually because of COVID vaccine failure and why it actually wasn't preventing any kind of illness whatsoever. And you see they just keep changing the definition of what a vaccine actually does. But the definition of a vaccine was actually way different than it was now versus a year ago. So just remember, this is what the CDC actually said on how monkeypox spreads. Direct contact with monkeypox rash, scabs, body fluids from a person with monkeypox, touching object, fabrics, clothing, surfaces that have been used by someone with monkeypox in which they actually have the exposed sores on the skin, and contact with respiratory secretions. Not breathing, but we are literally talking about respiratory secretions, why they actually must go like droplets, not vapors, not mist, and actually end up from the mouth to your mouth, which the easiest way to do that is to be swapping spit, okay? Now, what they also say is they don't say anything about that this can be spread, asymptomatic spread, and it also can be, spread like respiratory mist that you need to be wearing a mask or anything like this. So just so you know that if down the road they start saying, hey, you need to mask up or you need to do this, understand how it actually spreads and make sure that the CDC doesn't change the definition of how it spreads, okay? I want you to think of this. The CDC, Centers for Disease Control, you would think that they would have a handle on all viruses because that's literally what they do is they study viruses and bacteria, and so in no way, shape, or form should they change how it spreads over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks. Guys, if they approved a vaccine 2 years ago and it was submitted for approval 3 years ago, you're sure as heck know they know how this actually is spread. So don't let them change the narrative coming up over the next 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. Now, I am going to talk to you, kind of take a pause when it comes to monkeypox, because I'm going to go in the immune system in just a little bit, because really it involves any kind of bacteria or any virus or any kind of foreign protein for that matter. But let's talk about the CDC actually changing their recommendations. So coming up, I believe it was last week, is the CDC actually relaxed their recommendations. Guys, you probably already know this. Maybe not as much in Canada, but literally all of the rules that they called mandates, that they were not laws, but all of the draconian rules that they put in at schools, that corporations put in at their stores, in conjunction with local health departments. I even actually called up the local health department and said, "What? This doesn't make sense. Why are you doing it?" And they're like, "Well, it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. It's what the CDC is actually recommending." Guys, there's so many people who just follow along because the higher ups actually tell you to, without using any kind of common sense and reasoning. And guys, I want you guys to understand is that you do have a brain. You do have the ability to be able to think, to be able to use logic, and to be able to reason. But for some reason, the higher-ups actually do a form of gaslighting, saying, well, you don't have our criteria, you don't have our level of education to be able to understand these things, so you just need to take our word for it. So one of the interesting things is that the CDC started to relax their recommendations. So I actually went to the CDC website, and here was the press release that came out August 11th, so just last Thursday. And here's what they say. The title of it is CDC Streamlines COVID-19 Guidance to Help the Public Better Protect Themselves and Understand Their Risk. Okay? Now they say to help the public better protect themselves and understand their risk. Okay? So they say COVID-19 continues to circulate globally. However, with so many tools available to us for reducing COVID-19 severity, there is significantly less risk of severe illness, hospitalization, and death compared to earlier in the pandemic. So notice how they say it has nothing to do with having a normal, healthy, robust immune system response. It was saying that we have a bunch of tools now available in the form of biologics, in the form of drugs that are going to help you avoid hospitalization. They don't say anything about actually helping an immune response by not eating a ton of sugar, keeping your insulin response low, by actually taking natural antivirals, by actually helping restore barrier function, because that's where actually the immune response is actually sitting at. But they say nothing about any of those things that could actually help you. Vitamin D, zinc, nettle leaf, I mean, you name it, astragalus, even chamomile. I mean, certain things, and how we know when and why to use them is all based on immune testing and other testing as well. But they say that, you know what, we have all these things in place, so if you get it, you're just going to be fine, because now we actually know how to take care of it. So here's what they say when they're actually relaxing some of their guidelines, okay? Now the reason why they say is they say this. Say, well, we're in a stronger place today as a nation with more tools like vaccination, boosters, and treatments to protect ourselves and our communities from severe illness from COVID-19, okay? They say, we have a better understanding of how to protect people from being exposed to the virus, like wearing high-quality mask testing and improved ventilation. That's their answer, is still wearing masking by testing and improved ventilation. This new guidance acknowledges that the pandemic is not over, but also helps us to move to a point where COVID-19 is can no longer severely disrupts our daily lives. Well, let me tell you something. You have disrupted millions of people's lives over the course of the last 2 and 2.5 years. You have actually ruined people's lives, and it has nothing to do with an illness. You close down businesses, you close down churches, you actually polarize people. People who would normally not hate each other started hating each other because of the vaccinated and unvaccinated. You pit those people together. People started, literally losing friendships over the idea of masking versus not masking. And by the way, when they say wearing masks, there's no scientific evidence to actually prove that it actually works, because wearing a mask is literally like saying, I'm going to put a chain link fence up around my pool to keep the mosquitoes out. And so now they're saying, well, we don't want it to severely disrupt your life. And I tell the CDC, guys, it's too late. You already did it, and it's a little too late to start walking it back, okay? Now, here's what they recommend. They're no longer recommending screening tests of asymptomatic people without known exposures, so it's no longer recommended. So you guys understand, literally the schools were blowing up because they were forcing students to do asymptomatic testing. The reason why is because the CDC actually recommended it. Guys, you can't have an active infection. If you have an infection, you're going to have symptoms, and you can't walk around. They're basically saying this whole idea of asymptomatic spread doesn't actually exist. This is now what they are saying. Just remember this. What scientific criteria are you using to actually start to relax these standards? Oh, you're not. Well, in that case, what scientific standards were you using to enact these standards? Oh, you didn't have any either. Now they're saying, emphasizing that physical distance is just one component, how to protect yourself and others, but they're saying there is no need to necessarily stay 6 feet apart, or if you use the metric system, 2 meters apart, what actually comes out to about 3 inches more. I mean, how unscientific is that? Guys, there is no scientific data of actually showing that maintaining a distance of 6 feet apart actually even worked. So why can they walk these back? Because they did not have any science to actually recommend doing these things, and all of the principalities and all of the government agencies and all of the schools and all of the school administrators, they just followed their marching orders and didn't ask questions. And let me ask you something, to all the people who are in government, to all the people who are in school as leaders, shame on you, because you are in a leadership position and all you did was say yes, and you already ruined students' experiences, you ruin people's livelihoods, you ruin people's jobs, you ruin relationships, all because of unscientific recommendations that you are now walking back. And I'm going to show you something that is absolutely incredible. I said, I want to look at this and I want to see why they would walk back these recommendations, okay? Because this actually goes and looks at new cases over the course of the start of the pandemic to where we are at now. So here's your timeline. Number one, you see down there with the number of cases, this is when they shut down, not our, but your. They shut down your businesses, they shut down your schools, and they shut down your churches. And in fact, in some areas, people were arrested for not shutting down their businesses, for not shutting down their churches. I will tell you one thing, we never shut down our businesses. And we had the police called. The police said there's nothing we can do. And the reason why is just not a law. Because we never ever shut it down. The reason why is people say, well, don't you care? I say, no, I do care. I care so much that I actually know and understand physiology about the immune system. I don't care. It's not some special virus. It's a foreign protein. If you have an immune system and that is strong, you can easily be able to overcome this. And we've proven that over the course of the last 2 to 2.5 years. So you actually see that right here, right around this area of November, December of 2020, the vaccine was actually introduced. And then you actually see that cases in which they started to enact mandatory, quote unquote, vaccinations. This was when they said, if you want to keep your job, you're going to have to get a vaccine. You're going to have to get boosted as well. This was for federal employees. They tried to do it in Illinois when it came to actual teachers. A lot of companies enacted policies saying if you want to keep your job, you're going to have to get the vaccine. And then they sloughed it off saying, well, this is because of CDC guidelines. What's interesting, though, is once they became mandatory, you saw an actual spike of just enormous magnitude. And this was actually called Omicron, which is just so weird, is because maybe the vaccine was actually causing this to take place. But then you see that it went down, and now you see it actually has picked back up over the summertime. And then when you look at here compared to here, and even compared to here, there's actually not that difference in quote-unquote number of cases. We can actually argue about even if the testing is even accurate, because I know that it's not. But if you actually looked and say, okay, if the test was accurate, which what the CDC was always going to say that it is, but think of this, it's the same number of cases, but here the CDC says, you know what, never mind. I guess we're just going to walk this back because we don't want to interfere too much in people's lives. And my answer to that is, guys, it's too late. You already did that. You are supposed to be the leader, the center of disease control, and it looks like that you have no idea, in fact, what you are doing. Here's my questions to the CDC. I doubt I'll actually get a response from the CDC. In fact, they may actually respond by taking down this video, but that's okay. I don't do this for social media popularity. I do it to spread truth to as many people as possible, no matter what the outcome is, even if it costs me something. Over the last 2 years, I have fought and I have gained friends. I've lost friends. I've gained, patients. I've lost patients because of it. But nothing will stop me. One of the best places, guys, to be in your life is to always speak the truth and not be concerned what the consequences actually are. So here's my questions to the CDC. If anybody from the CDC is watching, please respond. You can even private message me. Number one, if you are changing and relaxing these guidelines, even though you don't see a decrease in number of cases when you have these specific guidelines and enforcements in place, are you admitting that social distancing doesn't work? All you got to say is yes, we are admitting that it doesn't work. If they do admit that it doesn't work, then guys, basically all the things that the stores did by putting little dots down on the ground, by putting the arrows within the aisles, make sure you're going in one direction or another. My wife was actually verbally abused by an older gentleman because she was not going down the right path. The arrow was pointing the other way. This is how crazy it actually got. So number two, are you admitting that asymptomatic testing doesn't work. So if that doesn't work as well, then who is going to, I don't know, what are we going to do by all the students, for example, that weren't allowed to go to school, that were actually forced to illegally quarantine without due process? What are you going to do about that? How are they going to, what kind of retribution or what kind of, pain and suffering are they going to do in order to make up for that? Think about the number of students that were kept out of sporting events. Think about the number of students that lost in-person learning opportunities. Think about literally the months and the school years that they lost by staying at home doing remote learning because of this false narrative that now they're actually walking back without proof of any kind of scientific evidence for or against. Third question is what is your plan to right the wrongs done to millions of students, employees, and business owners? What is your plan on walking this back without any scientific proof? And number 4, why do you refuse to acknowledge the role of natural immunity being superior to artificially induced immunity? Guys, we've always known this, that what God has created is always better than what man tries to come up with. In fact, you guys can actually go to the Brownstone Institute, and there's actually now, don't quote me, but probably 150 articles, scientific articles on how natural immunity is superior to any kind of artificially induced immunity, especially when it comes to COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera. So it's there. We already know, guys. Medicine has never created something better than what the body is able to do, produce, and heal on its own. It just so happens that there's a lot of bad ideas out there. There's a lot of bad advice on how to, quote unquote, boost the immune system, on how to overcome autoimmunity. And this is why I will tell you time and time again, the Wellness Way approach is the most physiologically sound, most sane approach, most common sense approach, which is why we need to get back to this. And every single Wellness Way doctor from our office to offices all across the United States and Dr. Patrick Flynn, we have been 100% right about all of this. And why? Because we understand physiology and we understand the Swiss watch principle. So is the CDC, are they going to answer these questions? You can be the judge of that, okay? Now just remember this, guys. The CDC has notoriously been on the wrong side of history. They have been on the wrong side of history time and time again. My question to you is will you keep listening to them moving forward? Fool me once, shame on me, or shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So it's time to start learning about physiology, about learning about how the immune system responds, and to stop sitting and watching the TV and saying, what do you want me to do next, CDC? I'm all yours. I'm all ears. We have to stop worshiping the people in charge, which is why I believe that it's changing. But there's so many people who just say, yes, doctor, I guess it's what you recommend. Remember, doctors have notoriously been wrong on a lot of other things. And so it's time to start making sense. I always tell people, don't take my word for it. You will see, you go down the rabbit hole and you will see everything that I say has been right and makes sense. Reason why is because we work with physiology and not try to go against it, okay? Now, getting back to monkeypox. So getting back to this, or about any viral infection for that matter, it's all about your immune system. It is all about your immune system. Let me say that again. It is all about your immune system. The reason why I say this is because you cannot avoid all viruses. You cannot live your life trying to avoid everything, every single bacteria, every single virus. And if you try to do that, what you will be doing is you will become very sick, you will become very immunocompromised, and this is what happens even in the older population. They say, you know what, I'm getting older, I think I'm going to stop squatting. I think I'm going to stop picking things up off the ground. I think I'm going to just go into, my cane, into my walker, into my wheelchair, and you see them continue to whittle away. And the reason why is if you want to get better, you have to strengthen your body. Adaptation, the body adapts to its imposed demands. So if you want to walk better, you need to be squatting. You need to be picking things up. You should be doing it more as you get older. But the problem is that your immune system is no different. How do you actually develop immune system sufficiency? You have to start thinking of it as a muscle. If you do not work a muscle, and you decide that you want to double mask, you decide that you want to slather yourself in all kinds of antibacterial soap, a hand sanitizer all the time, you're constantly doing those things, then the reality is that you're going to have a very immature immune system, and then at that point, the immune system will not know how to respond to any virus. So how do you actually build a healthy, strong immune system? You live a lifestyle that is going to help create a sufficiency of immune system cells, but you also create sufficiency through exposure, just like you expose your muscles to exercise in order to force them to adapt and grow so that they can handle more things. So think about this. It is all about your immune system, and it always comes back to this question. Two people exposed to the same virus, one dies, the other one gets the sniffles. Is it not the same virus? So what's the difference? The adaptability of the host. So you will always be living with viruses. You cannot avoid all of them. So the question is what you have to do is you have to take the responsibility to start growing your immune system response. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, give me a thumbs up. Give me a heck yeah, whatever you feel like you do, or give me even a share. And so it's all about, you have to be able to cohabitate and live with a virus and be able to live with these bacteria. So guys, how do you actually, when you look at the immune system response, I'm going to show you through this example, hopefully it's a good example, of how the body actually works when it comes to foreign invaders. So yes, when I say what is a foreign invader, basically what it is, it's a foreign protein. Your immune system is designed to recognize foreign proteins. Why are they proteins? Because foreign invaders contain proteins. That's what differentiates themselves from foods, differentiate themselves from other things. So even the body can look at certain pollens and things like that as foreign proteins only if the barrier has become compromised. So viruses will have is considered a foreign protein. Bacteria is considered a foreign protein. But what's also interesting is that food that is not broken down and digested can also be considered a foreign protein, which is why it is so important to be digesting your food the way you're supposed to, having enough stomach acid, having enough digestive enzymes, having enough gallbladder release in order to be able to completely break down and also be able to sterilize your food. So what you see here is you see a castle complex. Here you have the castle here, and then you have the wall of the castle, okay? And then you see, before you get to the wall, you actually see the water, which is considered the moat. So I want you to think of your body as this. I want you to think of your immune system as this, as almost like a castle fortress. Because this is going to explain to you why what we are doing to stimulate an immune response is 100% completely backwards, no matter if it's COVID-19, no matter if it's anything, polio, smallpox, and no matter if it is actually the monkeypox. So I want you to think of this. Number one, if you look at the moat, okay? So the moat, if you have an enemy that is coming to attack you, coming to attack the castle, your first line of defense is actually having a moat, because now they have to actually swim through it. Your body actually has a moat, and what it is called is it's called a mucus layer, okay? So you have a mucus layer. If you think about inside of the body, you have these things known as mucous membranes. So you have them in your cheeks, you have them in your lungs, you have them in your gastrointestinal system, and you kind of have it, on your skin, because the skin actually secretes oils and things like that in order to provide an extra barrier. So in that mucus layer, some of the things you have to actually protect you is something known as secretory IgA. Secretory IgA is actually your first line of defense against any kind of foreign invaders. Let's talk about if it was actually like your gastrointestinal system. This is why we can measure when we do a stool test. We see elevated secretory IgA on a stool test. We know, all right, well, this person is very inflamed. The body and the immune system has put a bunch of soldiers at the barrier because there's a lot of things that are actually starting to come through. So they're putting more guards at the barrier because it says something else is going to be coming through and we need to be ready for it. So then on top of that, you actually have the castle wall. These are known as your epithelial barriers. Dr. Nate, what on earth is epithelial? You got to stop using these big words. Epithelial means basically skin. So anything that comes into contact and forms a barrier from external environment to your internal environment, your body has what's known as an epithelial barrier. So you have your skin, you have your lungs, you have your genitourinary barrier, you have your gastrointestinal barrier, because all of those are coming into contact with the external environment. Yes, even if you eat something, that is still considered your external environment before it passes through the barrier to go inside of your body. So when you look at this, you have another barrier. So here you have your mucous membranes, you then have your epithelial barrier, and the skin is several layers. But if you look at your gastrointestinal system, it's just one layer, and you wouldn't want it any other way, because that's actually how foods, which should be broken down from carbohydrates and fats and proteins, they need to get broken down into their smallest amounts to be able to pass through the cell, not around the epithelial barrier. Once it starts passing around as a full protein and not an amino acid, then the immune system is going to recognize that as a foreign invader, and voila, now you actually have food allergies, which a heck of a lot of people actually have. So here you have the barriers in order to keep foreign invaders out. Number 3, what you have along the barriers are special immune system cells known as macrophages, which are largely going to be around the gastrointestinal system, and dendritic cells, which are primarily going to be underneath the surface of the skin. Guys, when you say, where is most of your immune system located? Guys, if people say, well, it's your gut, your immune system is your gut. The only reason why you have a lot of immune cells around the gastrointestinal barrier is because you have all kinds of surveillance and guards that are surveying the area where you are going to have invasion of a foreign protein or some kind of enemy. So this is why, guys, you have so much of your immune system sitting underneath your skin, and why you have so much of your immune system sitting around the gastrointestinal barrier. So it's not that your immune system is your gut, it's your gut is a barrier and the immune system is sitting there ready to actually take any kind of foreign proteins, because if it actually goes through, what these cells do, these macrophages, dendritic cells, is they will engulf it, and then they will actually present it to what are known as helper T cells. So basically, they're sitting along the castle wall and say, hey, we just destroyed a foreign invader. I'm going to take the foreign invader's uniform and I'm going to present it to these helper guards that are along further inside, and I'm going to tell them, this is what it looks like, this is what it is, this is what we are under attack with. These helper T cells will actually start to coordinate, think of it as a general, start to coordinate an enhanced immune system response, because now then what will happen is you will then sensitize what are known as killer T cells. In this castle, this is like sniper specific. So what they are doing is they are actually tagging these different things that are coming across. They know exactly what they look like, and they are there to actually kill these things a lot quicker, because now they know what they look like, now they know what they do, and so this is how you have an enhanced immune system response that takes about 10 to 14 days in order to mount. This is why, guys, you need both an innate and an adaptive immune system that is sufficient. If you do not have a good innate system response, then many times these cells won't be able to keep up. If you even have a great innate system response, which is known as your macrophages, dendritic cells, your neutrophils, and things like that, then what will happen is, you need both of these to be sufficient, which is why a lot of people didn't have this being sufficient and that this part couldn't keep up. The most amount of cells that you actually have are going to be some of your neutrophils, your macrophages, dendritic cells, because they need to be in higher amounts and sit around the barriers. Let me think about it. What do you have more of? Do you actually have more soldiers, or do you have more generals? So you're always going to have more soldiers than you are generals, but you need enough of both, okay? So watch. If you have that happening, then you have what is known as immune system sufficiency. You have immune system sufficiency, but that's how the immune system works. Think about this. You have a moat, you have a barrier, you have a macrophage dendritic cell that are actually taking what they found to a helper T cell and then coordinating an adaptive T cell response. That's how it happens. Now here's what's interesting, guys, is that the immune system response begins with your barriers, okay? So it's about the barriers first. That's how you get an infection, then your innate immune system, and then your adaptive. Innate means you were actually born with it. It doesn't require antibodies, T-cell sensitization, or anything like that. And then finally, you have your adaptive immune system response. Now I'm going to ask you guys a question. Name an immune, quote-unquote, procedure that does it backwards. Name a procedure that we do millions of times every single year to our children, to our elderly, and recommended, at least, every 6 months to almost every single person. Name a procedure that does it completely backwards. Meaning we are going to bypass the barriers. We are going to take a protein, bypass the barriers, put it actually instead of not at the barriers, but inside of the body, which then forces antibody production, and that will quickly wear away. Why? Because you didn't have any kind of infection at the level of the barriers. And you guessed it, guys, it is vaccines. See, this is why I have no problems saying that vaccines do not make any sense. Please don't tell me, guys, what about polio, or what about this? Guys, if polio was so deadly, it would kill 100% of people. Going back to why is it that two people have the same virus yet have a massively different response? And so the reason why is we're doing it backwards. We are hyper-stimulating the immune system backwards. And my question is have we traded in normal childhood illnesses that children should actually have in order to start to flex their immune system muscle, in order to train the immune system response? Have we traded that in out of convenience or out of fear that something is going to happen for much larger problems like allergies, specifically hyperimmune system responses? Have we traded it in for having a lowered immune system response, and also actually making a person more vulnerable to specific toxicities because they bypass the barriers? That's a question that you have to seriously start to consider. So when it comes down to the immune system, guys, if you have a low immune system, any virus has the ability to be able to kill you. And so it's not that a virus is more deadly than the other. It's just it's deadly in people who have let their immune responses get completely decimated. And so how can that be? There's a lot of different reasons why the immune system can be decimated, but it always comes back to how do you know how your immune responses are? Well, you actually test. And this is why, guys, you can test every single immune system cell. You can test your CD4 response, your CD19 response, your natural killer cell response, the amount of white blood cells that you have, your CD8 cells. And basically when we test the immune system, we're actually testing all of these different cells to see if in fact there is sufficiency. If you have sufficiency of your immune system, does it mean you'll never get sick? No. Because the sickness, or what we think the sickness with a fever, when we look at joint pain, when we look at that, that's actually the immune system working. So a virus does nothing. It's the immune response in action that is producing the inflammatory chemicals that are producing the symptoms. So can you measure this? Yes. It is known as a CBC with differential, and then known as an expanded lymphocyte enumeration, in which you measure some of these specialty white blood cells like lymphocytes, specifically like your helper T cells, your killer T cells, your natural killer cells, and then the cells, the B lymphocytes that are producing the antibodies. Guys, if you're low in one, we know what it takes in order to help raise those responses back to sufficiency. So what on earth causes a person's immune system to start to go low? What causes a person to know, I do have a compromised immune system? Well, it comes down to this. If you look at a 30,000 foot view, that it is mental stress, it is chemical stressors, and it is actually physical stressors as well. So guys, this right here, this will stress out the brain. Your brain is actually a sensory organ to stressors. When it is stressed, you're going to have a hormonal response in response to that stress, which is actually immunosuppression. If you are chemically inflamed over time, that is going to be hurting the immune system. And yes, even mental stress, guys, if you look at the role of cortisol and immunosuppressant, meaning if you have a high amount of mental stress, it will actually suppress the immune response, and it will actually make you much more susceptible to getting things like a virus or some kind of bacterial infection, and also seeing a breakdown of your tissues over time. So that's the 30,000 foot view, but then you can get into it a lot more very specifically by testing and then understanding, yes, I can get a detailed, comprehensive plan and how to actually restore these different causes back to sufficiency. All of these things are things that can suppress the immune system. So guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please join me if you're from the Yorkville or the surrounding areas for a next event. It is our approach to inflammation. It's going to be a week from tomorrow, which is going to be, I believe, August 23rd, 6:15 in our office. And so at that time, we're going to talk about the number one thing you got to start getting a handle on is inflammation, because you can't heal anything unless you first know how to handle the sources of the inflammation. Remember, a scab will never heal if you keep falling on it. And so it doesn't matter how much turmeric you want to give to it. It doesn't matter how much betadine you are putting on it. It doesn't matter, what kind of essential oil you want to put on it, is that you first and foremost have to figure out why I am causing this to happen. So we're going to talk about the causes of the inflammation and the first steps you need to do it in order to get restoration back to your immune system, restoration back to your life. Because I always ask people, do you want to continue to be manipulated or do you want to be restored? And the only way to begin the process of getting restored is by first and foremost understanding inflammation. And so if you are saying, Dr. Nate, yes, I want to get to that, please go to the very top of the page and you will find pinned to the very top our registration for this in-person event, our Exemplify Health Center's approach to inflammation. Guys, this is an awesome, awesome talk. People's light bulbs turn on when they understand that first and foremost, the thing I have to do the most is start to get inflammation under control. And remember where inflammation takes place. It takes place around the barriers. That's where it starts to happen, because that's where most of your immune system is actually sitting. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please share. I always appreciate and humbled when you watch. So thank you again for joining us. We will check in later on in the week, probably with an awesome topic. And if you have any other topics that you would like to hear, please drop a comment below. So guys, I hope you have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of your Monday night. Be well, be blessed. Keep checking this page for some awesome posts. We're finishing up our Man Up Challenge coming up on Saturday. These guys have worked really hard. It is awesome. We'll be doing a video at the end showing their results. So guys, be well, be blessed. We will talk to you very soon.